Hello everyone. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment with where you're from and what time you're watching. That way, YouTube will keep sharing stories like this one with you. Now, let's begin. I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, one of those places where everyone knows who you are, what you're doing, and even your family history going back generations. It was 1976, and I had just turned 17. My life was mostly about school, church, and sometimes going to the drive-in with my best friend Ellie. My dad ran a small hardware shop on Main Street, and my mom was the type who ironed pillowcases and always made us say grace, even before breakfast. Life was calm, ordinary, and steady. But that changed when I got involved with Caleb Turner. Caleb was the son of Judge Raymond Turner, the kind of man whose presence filled a room and made people go quiet. Everyone either feared him or respected him. Caleb wasn't like his father, though. He was charming in a way that made girls forget everything their parents had taught them. He had this lazy smile, sun-bleached hair, and a voice that made you feel like no one else mattered. That summer, we started seeing each other in secret. I didn't tell anyone, not even Ellie, because I knew people would say I wasn't good enough for him. When I found out I was pregnant, I was sitting on my bed holding a test I had bought 2 towns away so no one would see me. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. The first person I told was Caleb. I was terrified, but I thought he'd stay with me, that we'd work through it. He didn't say much at first, just stared at the floor, biting his cheek. The next day, he came back and told me his family would take care of everything. I didn't understand then how serious he was. Within a week, my world shifted completely. My parents were told I had suffered a breakdown. That's the word they used, breakdown. Suddenly, I was unwell, and they said I needed to go somewhere quiet to recover. They sent me to live with one of my mom's distant cousins in a worn-down farmhouse almost 50 miles away. I had no phone, no car, no way to reach anyone. My dad didn't even drive me there. Caleb's uncle did. He never spoke during the ride. I just stared out the window, watching the trees blur past, feeling like I was disappearing. The farmhouse was old and smelled of dust and mothballs. The woman I was left with, Aunt Margaret, though I'd never met her before, was in her late 60s, wore heavy shoes, and kept her curtains closed all the time. She never asked about me, never offered comfort. There was no TV, no radio, just a few religious pamphlets and an old Bible with thin, crinkly pages. I spent most days staring out the back window, watching the fields shift in the wind, waiting for something, anything. At night, I listened to the house creak, the wind slip through cracks and coyotes in the distance. I wasn't allowed to visit town. Aunt Margaret said it was better that way. I didn't know what lies people back home were being told. Ellie never wrote, and neither did my parents. Weeks turned into months. My stomach grew, and so did the silence. I felt invisible, like a ghost in someone else's life. Sometimes I spoke softly to the baby just so I could hear my own voice. I'd whisper, "I don't know what they're doing to us, but I'll find a way out." Then one morning, I heard voices outside. I peeked out and saw Judge Turner's black Buick in the dirt driveway, dust still rising around it. He didn't come in. He just spoke calmly with Aunt Margaret on the porch while she nodded with her eyes down. After he left, she handed me a suitcase and said I had to pack. They found a better place, she told me. No details, no answers. I asked where we were going, but she said nothing, just pointed at the suitcase and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought, what if I vanish completely? The next day, Caleb came. It was the first time I'd seen him in months. He looked thinner, pale, like he hadn't been sleeping. But he wouldn't meet my eyes. He just stood by the door while Aunt Margaret gave him the suitcase. He mumbled something about a clinic in Ohio, that it would all be paid for. I told him I didn't want to go anywhere. I begged him to tell my parents the truth. That's when he snapped. He said it was too late, that everything had already been arranged. I didn't fully know what he meant, but his tone made me shiver. I didn't go to the clinic. That night, while Aunt Margaret slept, I took the suitcase and slipped out the back door. I walked for hours under the moonlight, gravel crunching under my shoes. Finally, I found a gas station with a payphone. I had no money, but the clerk, a skinny kid with long hair, let me make a call. I dialed the only number I remembered, Ellie's. When she answered, all I said was, "It's me. I need help." 6 hours later, Ellie arrived in her brother's old Chevy Nova. When she saw me, she cried. She told me people thought I'd been sent to some private hospital out west, that my parents had been told I wanted no visitors, and that Caleb had gone back to school like nothing ever happened. I stayed hidden in Ellie's basement for a few weeks. Her parents were quiet, but they knew something wasn't right. They never asked questions. They just let me stay. Later, I found a women's shelter in Louisville that helped girls in my situation. That's where I gave birth to a little girl with dark hair. I named her Hope. Years later, I learned the whole truth. A cousin of Caleb's, drunk at a wedding, let it slip. The Turners had made up the story about my breakdown, faked medical papers, even paid off a doctor. They wanted to send me away, take the baby, and erase me completely. To them, I was nothing but a problem. I never saw Caleb again. I heard he became a lawyer, just like his father. I changed my name, left Kentucky, and raised Hope by myself. Now she's in college, smart, strong, and full of fire. She doesn't know the full story yet. One day I'll tell her, not for pity, but so she understands how far people will go to protect power and how far you have to go to protect yourself. Back in that town, some still think I had a breakdown. Maybe that's easier. Let them believe it. The truth is, I made it through. I survived. I'm not superstitious. I never believed in ghosts, witches, or strange backwoods cults. At least not until recently. I'm 28 now, living alone in a rented house in Jackson, Mississippi. Up until a few weeks ago, my biggest worries were paying rent and the strange noise my car makes in reverse. I like hiking on weekends to clear my mind. A few friends and I, people I've known since college, planned a trip to a wooded area about an hour and a half east of Jackson. Imagine being 17, told to pray harder, told your silence was holy, while behind closed doors, they twisted faith into chains. That's when I learned that not everyone who speaks of God truly follows him. Let's get back to story. It was public land, not marked as special, just quiet and out of the way. It was me, Jordan, Will, and Rachel. Nothing fancy, just a short hike with snacks, photos, and no cell service. I wish we had turned back the second we saw that first cross. We had wandered off the trail, something we usually do when the main paths get boring. That's when Rachel pointed out what looked like an animal skull nailed to a tree. At first we thought it was some strange hunting thing or maybe a bit of local folk art, but then we noticed more. Dozens of wooden crosses, uneven and handmade, stuck into the ground. Old, dirty strips of clothing tied to low branches. Some things looked so old they were falling apart. There were little rag dolls, too, and melted candle stubs pressed into the dirt. The whole place felt heavy, quiet, like the woods themselves were pressing down on us. We didn't say it, but all of us felt uneasy. I pulled out my phone and took lots of pictures, close shots of the crosses, the bones, even a hoodie that looked stained with dried blood. Will told me to quit it, but I didn't think much of it. I figured later I'd post them online, maybe one of those creepy things found in the woods threads. None of us wanted to step deeper into that grove. At the center was an older, thicker tree, carved with markings and nailed bones, more than any of the others. We just stared at it until Jordan finally said, "We should go." And we left without arguing. That should have been it. But later that night after I got home, I posted 3 of the pictures online. No faces, no locations, just the objects. A few hours later, after midnight, I got a text. No words, just a photo. At first, I didn't understand it. Then I realized it was my driveway, shot from across the street. My car was there, the porch light was on. It had been taken just minutes before. I rushed to the window, but outside it was dark and still. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound had me up, checking the curtains, the locks, even sitting in the dark with my phone in my hand. Nothing else happened until 3:12 a.m. I remember the time exactly, staring at the clock when another text came. Another photo, this one closer, my front window. The curtain was half open, and behind it you could see the glow of my TV. I was sitting in that room when the picture was taken. My stomach turned cold. I tore the curtain aside, yelling into the dark, but no one was there. I locked everything again, double-checked every door. The next morning, I called Jordan. I didn't want to sound crazy, so I asked if he'd noticed anything weird. He paused, then admitted he'd gotten a message too, just a blank screen. Rachel and Will hadn't gotten anything, at least not yet. We all felt like we had stepped into something we were never meant to see. I deleted the post and the photos right away, but it felt too late. That day I bought a security camera and mounted it over my door. Even though the neighborhood is decent, I couldn't shake the feeling. That night, no new text. I thought maybe it was done. But the next morning, when I checked the footage, my heart stopped. At 2:47 a.m., someone had walked up to my steps and just stood there for almost 5 minutes. They never knocked, never moved, just stood still. The video was grainy, but I could make out a hood, dark jeans, and something hanging from their neck, maybe a bone. At one point, they turned and looked right at the camera, but their face was hidden in shadow. I called the police and showed them. They made a report, but nothing came of it. By the end of that week, Rachel called crying. Her cat was missing. She said her back door was wide open that morning, though she swore she locked it. She lives alone, and now she won't stay there unless her brother comes over. Will grew quieter. He's not one to show feelings, but when I saw him, he looked worn down. He admitted he hears noises at night, branches snapping, faint knocks. We all agreed. We never should have touched anything, never should have taken pictures, and definitely not posted them. I started leaving lights on in every room, even empty ones. I felt watched all the time. Taking out the trash, walking to my car, I always thought someone was hiding just out of view. The texts didn't stop, but they changed. No more photos, just words, short ones, repent, return, watch. Sometimes nothing at all, just the ping of a new message at 2 or 3 in the morning. I stopped opening them. I changed my number, but it didn't matter. The messages still came from strange, random numbers. They weren't meant for reply, just reminders. One afternoon, I came home and saw something nailed to the tree in my backyard. A small wooden cross, messy, tied with feathers and string. I have no idea how anyone got back there. My yard is fenced in, the gate locked. I called the police again, but like before, they only wrote it down. That night, I couldn't stay in the house. I slept in my car 2 blocks away just to feel hidden. Then suddenly, it stopped. No more texts, no more shadows on the camera, no more noises outside. The air even felt lighter around the house. I never found out who sent the photos or who left the cross. None of us did. Jordan moved away. Rachel gave up hiking. Will deleted all his social media. We hardly talk anymore. Maybe we're all trying to pretend it never happened. But I can't forget. I still think about that tree sometimes. The carvings, the bones, how old it looked, like it had been used for years. I don't step off trails anymore. Honestly, I barely leave town. And sometimes, late at night, I hear what sounds like a soft knock. I freeze every time. I never check. I don't want to know. That's the worst part, not knowing what it was, what we found, or why it followed us. I've come to believe some places are left behind for a reason, and some things aren't meant to be uncovered. I grew up in a small town in Nebraska that barely shows up on a map. The kind of place where everyone knows who you are and what your family does. I'm 28 now, but what happened when I was 14 still clings to me like something unfinished. Back then, Halloween was the highlight of the year. It wasn't about candy anymore. It was about messing with old Mr. Delvin. He lived in the worn-down brick house at the edge of our road, right where the cornfield swallowed the pavement. He was in his 70s, always wore high-waisted pants with food stains on his undershirt, and he hated kids, especially me and my brother Nate. Every Halloween, it became a kind of battle, us against Mr. Delvin. In 5th grade, we threw toilet paper all over his porch. In 6th, we stuck a fake snake in his mailbox. By 8th grade, we were leaving fake arms in his yard, lighting stink bombs near his windows, and Nate even rigged a speaker to scream from the bushes at random. Every time, Delvin came out with his flashlight, waving it around like a sword and shouting threats in his scratchy voice. But nothing ever really happened. He never called the police or our parents. He just muttered about payback coming one day. We thought he was just bluffing. That year, Halloween landed on a Saturday and it was warm, perfect for being out late. Nate and I had been planning our biggest prank yet for weeks. But when we passed Delvin's house at sunset, something was different. His place was decorated for the first time ever. Paper skeletons taped in the windows, a big inflatable pumpkin in the yard, and flickering orange porch lights. It looked cheap, like he'd bought it all in one kit and tossed it together. But that was the weird part. Delvin had never decorated before. Nate nudged me and said, "He's trying to one-up us. We can't let it slide." We waited until 10:30 p.m. After the trick-or-treaters were gone and the street was quiet, Nate had brought a bag of his prank gear. Nothing dangerous, just his usual stuff. Smoke bombs, a motion trigger soundbox, and a baby doll splattered with fake blood. We crept up the back of Delvin's yard, moving low behind the row of bushes that lined his property. Everything was dark now, except the soft orange porch light. No TV noise, no music, not even the radio static he always kept on. It felt staged. I whispered, "This feels wrong." Nate just grinned and tossed me the soundbox. "That's the point. Let's mess it up." We didn't realize he was the one setting us up. Like always, we split up. Nate went toward the shed by the back fence, and I stayed closer to the house. I was looking for a good spot to hide the soundbox when I noticed something strange. The inflatable pumpkin on the porch was sagging, collapsing like air was leaking out, but no one was there. I thought maybe it had a hole. Still, it made the whole scene feel creepy. I crouched behind a bush, waiting to see Nate's flashlight. That's when I heard the shed door creak open, followed by a loud clang, like metal slamming shut. Then silence. No footsteps, no sound. I waited, whispered Nate's name. Nothing. Another minute passed. I crept toward the shed. It looked the same from outside, old and falling apart at the bottom like everything on Delvin's property. But now the padlock was snapped shut tight. Nate didn't have keys. I tapped lightly on the door. "Nate?" No answer. I knocked harder. Still nothing. That's when I spotted it. A small trail camera mounted high on the shed corner, blinking red. Right under it, nailed to the wood, was a piece of cardboard with one word. Tricked. That's when I understood. This wasn't our prank. It was his. My stomach turned, and I swear my skin felt electric. I stepped back, eyes darting over the yard, expecting him to jump out from the dark. But no one came. The silence wasn't empty. It felt like someone was watching. I yanked at the padlock, but it didn't move. I tried smashing it with a rock, but it just clanked. From inside, I thought I heard something, a shuffle, maybe a muffled sound, like Nate trying to speak with his mouth covered. Panic hit me hard. I ran back to the street, standing under a dim lamp, my chest pounding. I had two choices: get help, which meant waking our parents or even calling the cops and admitting we had been harassing Delvin for years, or try to break Nate out before morning. I stared at the dark house, then back at the empty road. Cold wind brushed against me, and I knew we were in trouble. I couldn't leave him. I ran back and checked every window, every door, all locked, sealed. I was sweating, hands shaking. Then I found a small basement window in the back, the wood frame rotting. Using Nate's screwdriver from the prank bag, I wedged it open and forced my way in. The second I dropped inside, I knew it was a mistake. The air was heavy, damp, and smelled of mildew mixed with something metallic. The basement was filled with piles of tools, broken furniture, and a bunch of Halloween decorations. Masks, fake arms, props, some still in plastic. It looked like he had been collecting Halloween supplies for years. I crept up the stairs, careful not to make the boards groan. In the kitchen, it was dark, but a flashlight sat on the table. When I touched it, it was warm, meaning Delvin had just used it. My heart was racing. I rushed to the back door, unlocked it, and sprinted to the shed. With the screwdriver, I worked the hinge bolts until the door gave way. Inside, Nate was sitting on the floor, pale, knees to his chest. The shed wasn't empty. The walls were covered with photos, dozens of them. Pictures of us taken over the years, shots of us in costumes, walking past his house, even photos through our bedroom window. Nate's wrists were taped, but Delvin hadn't hurt him. He just left him there with the pictures, in the dark. The message was clear. I've been watching. I let it build. This is your punishment. We didn't talk. We just ran. After that, we never touched his yard again. Delvin never said a word, never called police, never told anyone. But every Halloween after, he put up the same cheap decorations, not for the holiday, but as a reminder, a warning that he still remembered, and maybe that he was still watching. Even now, when I drive past that house on visits home, I feel it. That same tingle in my skin, that same question. What would have happened if I hadn't gone back for Nate? I've never shared something like this before, but after what went down last year, I feel like I have to let it out. Maybe someone else has gone through something close to it. I'm 20 now, but this all happened when I was 18, senior year of high school. I grew up in a small town in Illinois where everybody knows everybody and secrets never stay hidden long. That's part of what made this whole thing worse. Back then, I was dating a new girl. Her name was Brooke, and things were honestly good. But then, out of nowhere, I reconnected with someone from my past, a girl named Megan, who I hadn't talked to since middle school. Megan and I had dated in 7th grade, though it was just kid stuff. We held hands at lunch, texted every night, nothing serious. We were just kids. One night she messaged me on Instagram after seeing one of my posts. She just wanted to say hi. At first it was casual. We traded a few jokes, talked about old times, and I told her I was dating someone now. She said she was happy for me and that maybe we could catch up sometime. I figured it was nothing. I didn't think she still cared about me. At the start, it really did feel harmless. We'd text once in a while, nothing flirty, just catching up. She said she had moved about 30 minutes away, worked part-time, and seemed like she was doing fine. But over time, the texts started coming more often, longer, and at random hours like 2 or 3 in the morning. I wouldn't reply then, but I'd wake up to these long paragraphs about how she never got over me, how she missed us, and how seeing me with Brooke made her feel sick. That's when I realized something wasn't right. I showed Brooke. She laughed at first, but I could tell it bothered her. After that, things got bad fast. Megan started showing up where she had no reason to be. One Saturday, Brooke and I went to our usual diner, and Megan just happened to be there, alone, sitting across from us, not even pretending to hide it. She didn't order anything, just stared. I tried to act like it wasn't happening, but Brooke was shaken. Later that week, Brooke started getting messages from a burner account. No picture, no name, just mean stuff like, he'll leave you like he left me, or you're just filling space. At first, we thought it was some troll, but then the account started sending private photos, old stuff I had only ever sent Megan when we were kids. That's when it hit me. She'd kept them for years. She even edited them to look recent and shared them around in group chats at school. Not just to Brooke, but to other kids too. I started getting texts from people I hadn't heard from in months, some pretending to be worried, others just spreading gossip. In a small town, that kind of thing spreads fast. Soon, I wasn't just the guy with a stalker. I was the guy from the pictures. I felt exposed and embarrassed in a way that's hard to explain. Brooke tried to hold on, but it wore her down. She stopped posting online, stopped talking much at school, and finally asked for a break. I didn't blame her. She hadn't asked for this. Megan kept pushing things further. I started noticing her car at night near my house, a black Nissan Altima. One night I went out at 11 to take out the trash, and I saw it idling across the street with the lights off. As soon as I stepped off the porch, it drove away. Another time, I heard knocking on my bedroom window at 2 a.m., but when I looked, no one was there. Just that same car parked half a block away. I tried telling my parents, but they brushed it off. My dad said, "Girls get emotional. She'll stop." My mom said to just block her. But that didn't help. She'd just make new accounts and send the same twisted messages. I stopped sleeping well. I'd stay up late checking the windows, scrolling through messages, waiting for her to strike again. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt sick. I wasn't scared she'd hurt me physically. I was scared because she didn't seem to have any limits, no shame, no line she wouldn't cross. And no one else saw it the way I did. Even school didn't help. When I told the counselor, they said it was off campus and online, so they couldn't do much. That only gave Megan more confidence. She started leaving notes. One was on my car windshield in the school lot. Written in red Sharpie, it said, "I see the way you look at her. You never looked at me like that." After that, I stopped parking at school. I stopped talking to people, even deleted my social media for a while. But she still found ways to remind me she was out there. The worst moment was when she showed up at Brooke's house. Brooke called me crying, saying someone had been banging on her bedroom window, and when her dad came out with a flashlight, they ran. She swore she saw Megan's face just before she ducked. That night, I drove straight over and called the cops. They came, but without proof there wasn't much they could do. Megan denied it all, and even tried to flip it, saying we were bothering her. After that, Brooke's parents made her block me too. They wanted no part of it anymore. Then, like flipping a switch, it all stopped. No more texts, no more fake accounts, no car outside my house. Megan just vanished. I don't know if someone finally got through to her, if she found someone else, or if she just got bored. I never found out, but the damage was already done. Brooke and I never got back together, and even now, some kids from school still whisper about it like it's some inside joke. I don't talk about it much because people either don't believe me or think I'm making it up. Sometimes I check her Instagram, not proud of it, just curious. Last I saw, she was engaged to some guy from another town. Her pictures looked normal, smiling, happy, like none of this ever happened. Part of me wonders if he knows, if she ever told him, or if she really did change. Maybe I was just one chapter where she lost control. Either way, I'll never understand how someone I barely dated as a kid could come back years later and ruin so much of my life. It still doesn't make sense to me. To this day, I still don't know what made her go that far. It felt like something inside her snapped and she became locked on me, like I owed her something I never agreed to. Even now, when I see a black Nissan Altima, my chest tightens. I hesitate every single time a follow request comes in from someone I don't know, because part of me fears it might be her again. It's been almost 2 years now, and even though I wish I could say I've fully moved on, the truth is I haven't. I still think about her sometimes, still wonder if she's out there keeping tabs on me, if she's waiting for the right moment, or if one day I'll wake up and it'll all begin again out of nowhere, just like it did before. Last year in early spring, I packed up and moved to rural Missouri. I thought a quieter life would help after the mess I went through. I had just turned 38, and after a drawn-out, exhausting divorce filled with paperwork, lawyers, and splitting everything in half, I couldn't stay where I was. I sold off what I could, bought a simple 2-bedroom house on a couple of acres outside a small town called Cassville. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid, and the yard was big enough to work on over time. I work from home doing CAD design for construction jobs, so I didn't need to be near any big city. I thought the space, the slower pace, and the quiet would be exactly what I needed. About 2 weeks in, I decided to put up a privacy fence along the back of the property. Nothing big, just some treated posts and boards to give me a barrier between my yard and the woods behind. The ground was soft from recent rain, so I figured it would go quick. I borrowed an auger from my neighbor, Bill, an older retired mechanic down the road, and started digging holes on a Saturday morning. The air was cool, birds were chirping, and for a while it felt peaceful, like this move was the right choice. But in the 4th hole, I hit something. At first, I thought it was a thick root, so I got down with a hand trowel to dig around it. But it wasn't a root. It was bone. Long, slightly curved with a clean break at the end. At first, I tried to tell myself it was a deer bone or something from hunting, but then I uncovered part of what looked very much like a skull. Not the full thing, just the top, but enough that I knew it wasn't from any animal. The way the pieces were clumped together made my stomach sink. It didn't look like one random bone. It looked like a buried body. My hands froze. I covered it back up quickly and went inside. I didn't know what the right move was, but I figured the sheriff's office would know. I called the non-emergency line, explained what I'd found, and within an hour, Sheriff Dalton showed up. He was middle-aged, clean-cut, uniform neat, like something out of a catalog. He was polite but distant, like he was just checking something off his list. I walked him out, showed him exactly where I'd dug, even pointed out where the bone was. He barely glanced at it before saying it was probably just a cow or hunting dog. He explained that people used to bury animals on these lots all the time. I asked if he was going to have someone test it, or at least take a closer look, and he shook his head, saying it happened more often than I thought. Something about how quickly he brushed it off left me uneasy. I'm not a professional, but I've seen plenty of animal bones before. This was different. The smooth curve, the rounded shape. It looked human. But I didn't argue. He was the sheriff. I was just the new guy. After he left, I sat on the porch for nearly an hour trying to convince myself it was nothing, that maybe he was right, but I couldn't bring myself to dig again. That day, I put the tools away and decided to leave it for the following weekend. On Monday morning, something odd happened. I was working in the kitchen when a dark SUV pulled into my driveway. I thought maybe it was a delivery, but it wasn't. It was Sheriff Dalton, this time out of uniform, wearing jeans and a flannel, carrying 2 coffees in a cardboard tray. He smiled easily, like we'd been friends for years, and said he was nearby and thought I might want to talk more about the backyard. Out of politeness, I let him in. He handed me a coffee like it was a peace offering, and we sat at my kitchen table. We talked a little about the weather, fishing, small-town things. Then he leaned forward slightly and asked if I'd ever thought about selling. I was caught off guard. He said he'd always liked this land, and if I ever thought of moving again, he'd be interested. I laughed nervously and told him I'd only just moved in. He nodded like he expected that, but then added that if I ever did want to sell, he could pay cash off the record, no real estate process, no paperwork. His voice was calm, casual even, but his eyes felt sharp, almost practiced. The rest of the talk blurred together. My gut was screaming not to take anything he said lightly. When he finally left, I stood at the window and watched him drive away. That's when I noticed the dirt packed into the wheel wells of his SUV. Not just any dirt, but the same red clay from my backyard, the kind that sticks for days. I wouldn't have thought about it, except I knew that specific mud. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every noise in the house set me on edge. I kept replaying the way he looked at me, the dirt, the forced friendliness. Around 2 a.m., I grabbed a flashlight and went back to the fence line. I stared at the ground where I'd dug before, and something looked different. The soil was disturbed, just slightly, but enough to tell someone had been there. The indentation wasn't there before. I hadn't touched it since Saturday, and I knew I hadn't gone near it after the sheriff's visit. So who had? Right then, I knew I couldn't just let it drop. The next morning, I called an old friend from college, Jason, who worked in Springfield as a forensics tech. I told him just enough to get his attention, not enough to accuse anyone. He said he'd come by that weekend with some gear to check the soil and maybe take samples. I felt better just knowing someone I trusted would be involved, but the relief didn't last long. 2 days before Jason was supposed to arrive, I came home from the store and saw my front door cracked open. Nothing in the house was broken or stolen, but my laptop, which had been sitting on the dining table, was gone. That was the only thing missing. I didn't report it. Honestly, I didn't even know who I could go to. If the sheriff really was part of this, what was I supposed to do? Call his office and have him show up again? I felt like I was already too deep into something I was never meant to see. That weekend, Jason still came. But by then the hole in the yard had already been filled, not by me. The dirt was pressed down harder than before, and someone had even tossed rocks on top, almost like they wanted it to look old. Jason still took a soil sample, but nothing came from it. He told me there weren't enough traces to tell what it was. Could have been anything, he said, though I could tell he didn't believe it either. A month later, I put the house back on the market. I never told anyone the real reason. I sold it to an older couple who wanted peace and quiet for retirement. I still feel bad sometimes, but I just wanted out. I never heard from Sheriff Dalton again, and I never saw his SUV around after I left. I've moved twice since then, but I still don't feel safe. Every time I see a police car, I get that same tight feeling in my chest. I don't know what was buried in my yard or who put it there, but it wasn't a cow. And I know for sure some people will do anything to keep things hidden. I moved into that apartment during my second year of college because it was the only place I could afford without having to share. It was a small 4-unit building on the edge of town, tucked behind an old gas station and a couple of empty lots. Rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask much, which seemed like a good deal. My place was on the second floor, and the landlord told me the unit above mine had been empty for more than a year. "Nobody's been up there since the last guy left," he said, like that was supposed to calm me down. I didn't think about it much. I just wanted somewhere quiet to study, and at first, it really was quiet. The walls were thin, sure, but since no one lived above me, I didn't have to deal with loud neighbors. That's why the first night I heard footsteps up there, I was more confused than scared. It was around 2 a.m., and I was cramming for a test when I heard slow, heavy steps moving across the ceiling. I paused my music just to make sure I wasn't hearing things, but the sound kept going, just a few steps, then silence like someone pacing. The next night, it happened again. Same time, same sound. I even knocked on the ceiling with a broom handle, hoping maybe a squatter would knock back. Nothing. I texted the landlord the next day, and he just replied that the place was still empty, said it was probably pipes. That didn't make sense. I knew what pipes sounded like, but he didn't care, so I let it go, at least for a while. But then I noticed it was happening more often, always after midnight, always that same uneven pacing. And every time it started, the air in my apartment felt heavier, like something was pressing down. Worse, I kept waking up with this strong feeling that I wasn't alone, like I was being watched. My heart would pound, and I'd check everything. Doors locked, windows shut, no sign of anyone. But the feeling wouldn't go away. One night, I heard what sounded like something heavy being dropped upstairs. I grabbed a flashlight and went to the stairwell door that led to the upper unit. I hadn't looked at it since moving in. It was supposed to be locked, but the knob was loose and the frame was splintered like someone had kicked it in. I just stood there staring. My first thought was to go back inside, lock the door, and pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity won. I nudged it open with my foot, and it groaned loudly, like it hadn't been moved in years. The stairwell smelled like mildew and dust. I shined my flashlight up and saw scuff marks on the wall, like someone had dragged their hands or something along it. I crept up the steps slowly, trying to stay quiet. The top door was cracked open. I pushed it gently, and it swung open with a low dragging noise. The room was dark, no power, no furniture, except for one thing. A torn mattress in the middle of the floor, right above where my bedroom would be. I stepped just far enough inside to shine my light on it, and that's when I saw the stains. Dark, reddish-brown stains soaked into the fabric, old, deep. My stomach turned. It wasn't just dirt. It looked like blood. A lot of it. I backed out fast, heart racing so loud I could hear it. I ran back to my place, slammed the door, locked every bolt, and even shoved a chair under the knob. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the living room with every light on, listening. Around 3:30 a.m., the footsteps started again, but this time, they didn't stop at pacing. I swear I heard something drag across the ceiling, like cloth or maybe a body, and then 3 heavy thuds like knees slamming into the floor. And the sound didn't echo like it came from an empty space. It was solid, close, like whoever it was right above me. I wanted to call the cops, but what would I even say? That I broke into the unit above mine, found a bloody mattress, and now someone was walking around? I felt crazy, trapped. The next morning, I went back up with my phone to record proof, but the door was closed tight. The lock was fixed, like nothing had ever been broken. I still had the photo of the cracked frame and broken knob, but when I showed it to the landlord, he just looked annoyed. He said the lock had been reinforced months ago. No way it could have been broken. I asked if anyone had been up there recently, and he just shrugged, told me he didn't even have keys for that unit anymore. "Nobody's in there," he said, then told me I was probably just stressed and needed more sleep. I left feeling even more alone. That night I slept on the couch with every light on. Nothing happened. No steps, no dragging. Silence. Same the next night. It almost felt worse, like something was waiting. I started avoiding the apartment as much as I could, staying at the library late, crashing at a friend's place. The feeling of being watched never left. Even in daylight, I'd catch shadows move at the edge of my vision. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus in class. 2 weeks later, I came back from a weekend away to grab clothes. Everything looked normal until I walked into my bedroom. Right above my bed, in the exact spot I'd always heard the noise, there were 3 perfect dents in the ceiling. Round, spaced apart, like knees pressing hard into the drywall. They weren't there before. I stared at them for a long time. I didn't even unpack. I just left and never stayed there again. I ended the lease early, never told anyone, and never looked back. It's been over a year, and I still think about it. I've tried to explain it away, maybe a squatter, maybe I imagined some of it. But none of it adds up. The broken lock that was suddenly fixed, the mattress, the stains, the dents, the silence that felt too forced, and that heavy feeling that someone was always right above me. I don't know what was in that unit. I don't want to know. All I know is something was wrong in that place. And whatever it was, it knew I was there. I'm not sure why I'm writing this. I guess part of me needs someone to tell me I didn't make it all up, that what I saw at that cabin was real. And I'm not just losing my mind. This all happened late September last year. I'd just finalized my divorce, and I just wanted peace. No traffic, no work emails, no awkward friends checking in. I found a rental for a hunting cabin in Montana, way off-grid, no neighbors, no service, no noise. Perfect. The photos showed a 1-bedroom tucked between trees with a porch and fireplace. I booked 2 weeks, packed my truck, and drove out without telling anyone. I just needed the quiet. The first few days were exactly that. Cold nights, but plenty of firewood. I cooked, read, and hiked. There was a trail out back leading to a stream, and I'd take coffee down there in the mornings. It was peaceful in a way you rarely find after living in cities. But by day 4, small things started bothering me. My bag of trail mix felt lighter than I remembered. A cold draft at night, even though I locked the door. I told myself I was just imagining things, still stressed. But then I saw muddy footprints, not inside but on the porch, fresh. The ground by the stream was still damp, and the prints looked like someone had been circling the cabin, not passing through. Human, with boots, not animal. I stared at them, trying to come up with another answer, but there wasn't one. That night, I barely slept. I kept hearing creaks on the roof, slow, steady, like someone walking. I kept telling myself it was branches or animals, but it didn't sound like that. The next morning, I found something that made my stomach drop. One of the cans I'd left in the kitchen, a can of chili I hadn't even opened, was gone. Just gone. When you're alone in the woods and food disappears from inside your cabin, it feels different. I searched everywhere, hoping I'd misplaced it, but it wasn't there. That was when it hit me. Someone was getting inside. I'd been locking the door every night, even checking the windows. But whoever it was, they weren't just passing by. They were watching, waiting. That same day, I drove into the nearest town, 40 minutes away, and bought a cheap trail camera. I told myself it was just to catch wildlife. Maybe it was just a bear or raccoon moving around out there. But deep down, I think I was hoping to catch something else. I came back before dark and set up the camera, hiding it in the trees and pointing it toward the cabin, tilted just right to see anyone or anything walking up the back trail. That night, I didn't light the fireplace. I sat in the dark with only a blanket and my flashlight, just listening. The noises on the roof came back, lighter this time, almost like whoever or whatever it was knew I was awake. But there was another sound too, a faint shuffling noise, like someone brushing through dry leaves, but not like the wind. I didn't sleep at all. When the sun came up, I went straight outside to get the camera. My hands were shaking while I slid the SD card into my laptop. Most of the videos were normal, squirrels running by, a deer walking past, nothing unusual. But at 2:47 a.m., there was one clip that made me freeze. A man was standing in the trees. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the cabin. He wore a dark hoodie, and I couldn't see his face. He didn't step forward, didn't move at all. He stayed there almost 5 minutes, watching. Then the clip ended. I replayed it again and again, hoping it was just a trick of light, but it wasn't. Someone had really been out there staring at me. After that, I wanted to leave, but I held back. Maybe I was being stubborn. Maybe I didn't want to admit I was scared. I started locking my bedroom door, keeping a knife by the bed. I even set up small markers near the door, leaning sticks in a little pattern, just to see if they got moved. And they did. The next morning, one stick was gone. The second can of chili I brought was missing too. But the worst thing, the inside handle of the front door had a smear of mud on it. That meant whoever it was had come inside while I was sleeping. That's when the sick feeling in my stomach hit me. I packed that same day. Didn't care about the deposit. I shoved everything into the truck, locked the cabin, and got ready to leave. Before pulling out, I checked the camera one last time. The last clip, recorded just before sunrise, showed the same man again. This time he was closer, maybe 20 feet from the cabin, standing at the edge of the trees. Same hoodie, same stillness. Only now he was holding something. I couldn't tell what it was, maybe a stick, maybe a tool, but he gripped it tight like he was ready to use it, and he was staring right into the camera. I drove back to Missoula without stopping, not even for gas until the tank was almost empty. I kept looking in the mirror, half expecting to see headlights behind me. I didn't call the police. Part of me felt dumb, like they wouldn't take me seriously. Nothing was really stolen except food, and I didn't have a clear look at his face. What could I even say? A man stood outside my cabin every night just staring. It sounded insane. I just emailed the owner and said the cabin felt unsafe. I didn't share the details. I didn't want him thinking I was losing it. I just wanted to forget. But I couldn't. For weeks I woke up at 2:47 a.m., no matter how late I went to bed. Sometimes I dreamed I was still in that cabin, trapped, with the man at the window just watching me. I moved into a new apartment, changed the locks, even got a dog. But that feeling of being watched never went away. The thought that someone could stand so close, so silent, and wait so patiently. It's worse than anything else. He wasn't trying to break in. He was waiting. For what? I don't know, and I don't want to know. I've told a few friends about it, but I always leave parts out. I never show them the video. It feels wrong, like it would give him more power. I don't know if he lived nearby, or if he just noticed me showing up and chose to follow. The strangest part is how it all just stopped. After I left, no more noises, no more signs, no strangers hanging around my new place. It's like, whatever it was, it stayed with that cabin, or maybe with that land. I'll never rent a place that far out again. Lesson learned. Anyway, that's what happened. There's no crazy twist or neat ending. I still think about it more than I should, and I wonder if he's done it to anyone else, or if I was the only one who noticed. Either way, I'm finished with cabins, finished with being alone in the woods. And if you're reading this and planning some remote trip to clear your head, make sure you're really the only one out there. I'm 32 now, but this happened when I was 25, just after I moved back to Arkansas to help my dad after his stroke. I had just quit my job in Nashville and was trying to get used to small-town life again. Most of my days were spent on errands, picking up meds and driving around for things he needed. I wasn't happy to be back in the town I had worked so hard to leave, but family comes first. That night, I was driving back from a friend's house about an hour away. I decided to take the older, longer road through the hills to avoid roadwork on the main highway. Hickory Creek Road was familiar, or at least I thought so. Around 11 p.m., the sky was pitch black. No streetlights, just stars and trees pressing close against the two-lane road. My phone had no service, but that wasn't unusual. I had the window cracked, music on low, when I saw headlights in the mirror. Nothing strange, until the truck started speeding up. It got closer. Way too close. From the shape, I could tell it was an old pickup, late 80s or early 90s. The way its headlights bounced with every bump gave it away. Then it started flashing its brights at me in quick bursts. I thought maybe my taillights were out, so I tapped the brakes to signal, but it didn't stop. The flashing got worse, longer bursts, one after another, and the truck never passed, even when the road widened. I sped up a little, 5 miles over, just to put some space between us, but it stayed stuck on my bumper. The way it drove, it wasn't sloppy or random. It felt planned, like the driver had nothing else to do but follow me. After 15 minutes of this, I was shaking. My hands hurt from gripping the wheel. I couldn't turn back, and I didn't dare pull over on a dark road. Then, I saw lights ahead, a gas station glowing green, a rundown old Shell station I'd only been to once, years back. It usually closed at 10, but I didn't care. I just needed light, maybe cameras, anything. I pulled in and checked the mirror. The truck was gone. Just gone. I thought maybe it turned off, but there hadn't been any side roads for miles. I parked at a pump, heart racing, waiting to see if it would pull in behind me. But nothing. Silence. The place was closed, of course. Lights still on inside, door chain shut, sign said, "Back at 6 a.m." The overhead lights above the pumps were bright enough that I felt a little safer. I got out, pretended to check my tires, kept looking back at the road, waiting for those headlights. After a few minutes, I sat in the car with the engine running, doors locked. My heartbeat slowed a little, but that feeling stayed. That crawling, prickling feeling, like someone was still watching me from somewhere I couldn't see. I decided to drive home. As I pulled out, I noticed fresh tire tracks near the edge of the lot. Deep ones, like a heavy truck had pulled in, waited, then left. They led right back to the highway I had just driven from. I hardly slept that night, my brain replaying the whole thing. Maybe he was drunk. Maybe he thought I was someone else. But one detail kept bothering me. The next morning, I called the gas station, asked if they had cameras. A man named Marcus answered, said they did, and when I explained, he offered to check. I drove back around noon, still shaken but wanting answers. Inside, Marcus looked confused. He told me something that made my stomach drop. The camera by the pump showed my car pulling in at 11:08 p.m., but 5 minutes earlier, at 11:03, that same old pickup had already pulled in. Same shape, same flickering headlight, same truck. It sat there for 2 minutes, then backed out and left. The footage never showed it behind me. According to the video, it was gone before I even got there. I asked Marcus if he was sure. Maybe the cameras had missed it. He replayed it frame by frame. My car pulls in. The road behind me empty. No truck, no headlights, just me. My stomach twisted. That truck had been inches from my bumper for miles. I saw it. I felt it. It was there. But somehow it had already been there before me. I stood in the store, trying to make sense of it. Marcus just shrugged and said, "You're not the first to ask me about stuff like this." The way he said it stuck with me. Like it wasn't the first time. Like other people had seen that same truck. I asked more questions, but he didn't say much else, just that people sometimes came in talking about strange trucks or figures, and sometimes the cameras didn't match. He said most of them never came back. I guess now I'm one of them. I thanked him and got back in my car. Before driving off, I looked around the lot one more time. No new tracks, no flickering headlight hiding in the trees. But I still felt watched. I've only taken that road a few times since, always in the daytime, never at night. I never saw that truck again. I can't explain it. How it followed me so close for so long, then showed up on camera before I even got there. No plates, no driver, no proof. But I know what I saw. I felt it. The pressure, the blinding lights, the fear like it was trying to warn me or force me. I just don't know which. I've told this story a few times, but I usually leave out the camera part. People already think it sounds strange enough when I say the truck vanished. But I still think, what if it wasn't trying to hurt me? What if it was trying to stop me from going somewhere, or trying to get there first? I don't know. All I have is the memory, and a fear that doesn't fade with time. Just thought I'd share, in case someone else has seen it too. An old pickup, no plates, flashing its brights.